Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is June 4th, 2024 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh. Here. Councilwoman Little Roberts. Councilman Taylor.
Here.
Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader. Mayor Simison.
Here. Next up is adoption of the agenda.
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh,
move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh,
move we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we will just move on to department commission reports. And the first items up is our years of service recognition. We'll go ahead and do this at the podium, and I think we'll ask Ms. Glenn to join myself at the podium first up. Carrie, nice to see you. So this is part of our ongoing efforts as we do our employee recognitions of those with the significant years of service to the city. So we've got two employees who will be celebrating 25 years with the city of Meridian. And so it's quite a momentous accomplishment. And Carrie predates me by a few years and had much longer hair when I first met her in that context. But it's an honor to be here as we celebrate you, Carrie, today. And it's great to see some great faces out there that are here as we honor you for your time with the city. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of your career in that context. And then if you want to say any words, we'll let you say a few words, but you don't need to tonight. But Carrie started her career in April of 1999 here in the Public Works Department as a department specialist. Continued to rise in the department to a senior department specialist, supervisor, and eventually became the business operations manager in 2008. And then in June 2009, moved into her current position with the utility billing manager in our finance department. Some fun facts about Carrie is that her and her husband, James, and lives with their two wiener dogs, Coco and Ebony. Preparing for the next phase of life with a 40-foot house on wheels to travel the country once you get to that point in time, but you're not there yet. But we appreciate you thinking about that next type of lifestyle and see if you can live on the road together.
Practicing now.
Practicing.
Find space.
It says you have a dry sense of humor. I've actually really always enjoyed your sense of humor very much and found it to be spot on is how I would describe it instead of dry. But you've always been a great team partner and participant in everything that has gone on in the city, especially with the finance department. You jump in, you make things happen. You've addressed issues that customers have had that I've worked with you on for years and years and years, always with a can-do approach and going to make it happen. And that's something that I've always personally very much admired about your time and your roles is I talked to Carrie, I know it's going to get handled. Sometimes one way or the other, but it's going to get handled, most definitely. So with that, I'm going to see if Todd would like to come up and say any words as well. Just someone you've worked with for a long time as well, but he doesn't have to. But I know he loves recognizes his employees.
He said he was gonna heckle, so I guess. I'll
Yes,
do it from here.
so just do it from the podium.
Well, Mayor, appreciate it. Carrie, again, you've been with us for a number of years, and as Robert stated, she leads her team by example, and her team always follows her. We all learn from her because she takes extreme pride in what she does. So a lot of us learn from that. I lean on her to be my sounding board for, I guess, decision making. I am the kind of the soft person, the blue person, and then she keeps me in check on, you need to be a little bit more direct, Todd. So she helps me stay guided. So we bounce a lot of ideas off each other. Again, we work well together. I think she works well with the team. Again, it's been an honor. Again, I appreciate it. Congrats on 25 years and only a couple more left, I believe.
We don't get into that.
Still under.
Couple.
We're good, we're good. So, Carrie, would you have like to tell us?
I would, but I know also.
All right, well.
Thank you. Thank you for all the nice words.
Oh.
I greatly appreciate it.
She said, thank you for all the nice words. She greatly appreciated it, so it's on the record. So Carrie, congratulations on 25 years with the city of Meridian. Mr. Leslie, would you like to join us? Or me? And Chief, why don't you go ahead and come on up as well? So we are here to recognize Jamie's 25 years with the city of Meridian. It says you start here a year before Carrie, so I don't know if we're a year late or, maybe some time off for bad behavior was
Could be a little
occurred
both.
during that time frame. But Jamie started as a police officer with the Meridian Police Department in 1998, and he was promoted to detective in 2002, became a corporal in 2003, sergeant in 2004, and lieutenant in 2010. Like I say, he's been here longer than I have, and he's always been a steady face from my memories. And he's had many roles in the department, but I think some of the things that stand out most to me is when it came to a commercial construction project occurring there at the department, Jamie was always the go-to guy, whether it was Jeff or Tracy. It's like I don't want to say it was, I don't know, go talk to Tracy or go talk to Jamie, but it was pretty much, I don't know, go talk to Jamie throughout all those projects because he was really the one that led the department in that. I also helped develop the department's report writing system, which is now used by the law enforcement agencies in Ada County. On the forefront of many technology process improvements for the department for the last 20 years. He's a leader amongst leaders and a tremendous asset to the city. And I'm sure the chief has many more wonderful things to say about Jamie in his time. But whether it's cars or buildings, you're the go-to.
Oh, I've got some things to say about Jamie, but not for here. No, the thing that I really, really appreciate about Jamie, and we talk about it a lot as a group and outside of our group, is when we're trying to figure out the answer to a problem and we're all going one direction, Jamie's the guy that comes up with this idea that everybody's like, why the heck didn't we think of that? And it happens over and over again. He just has a different way of looking at problems and looking at things. And I absolutely appreciate that. And he's one of those guys that makes sure that I don't step in it. Sometimes I have ideas or things that we're going one direction, and Jamie will always be the one that he's really willing to step into my office and say, hey, I know why you're thinking this way, but have you thought about the repercussions of this? And maybe we need to rethink it and go a different direction. And so I really, really appreciate that about him.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do that. Sorry, Chris. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 9, which is I'm also supposed to announce we have cake. Is that correct? Some cake out there. And for those that would like to have some cake, even if council wants to go grab a slice, we can have it while we enjoy, but there'll be some afterwards. So with that, we'll move on to item 9, which is the Idaho Transportation Department. Eagle Road presentation. Not sure exactly if it's going to be Jason, Dan, or somebody else. We'll wait and see. Like we're gonna have a group effort. We'll start off with Dan McElhaney and let him introduce whoever he's got from the team for any remarks and presentation. And Dan, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having us for an update on Eagle Road traffic safety improvements. I'm Dan McElhaney. I am the Deputy Chief Operations Officer for ITD statewide. And with me is one of my 6 district engineers, Jason Brinkman. So today, Mayor and council members, will give you an update on what our activities are on safety for Eagle Road since our last update in October. And we'll give an update on those proposed improvements for safety, congestion, speed, and signal operations. And we have a recommendation that we're going to be presenting to our board next week. Thank you, Meridian and Boise and Eagle, for being part of the working group since fall of 2022. And the mayor and Chief Deputy Miles have been a great team members. Ada County Highway District, Idaho State Police, and of course, Meridian Police Chief and his team, and the Idaho Transportation Department staff of District 3 and headquarters. We did initiate a fall contract last year to study signal timing on state highways in Ada County, as well as in Pocatello and Twin Falls. And so we have some preliminary results that Jason will be presenting on that in regards to Eagle Road. And this year we've been focusing on fine-tuning our opportunities for improvement on Eagle Road, working with city officials. So I think everybody knows Eagle Road pretty well, but if you don't, it's good to remind you that 6.5 miles of state highway from State Highway 44 to I-84. It has 18 signals, and sometimes it's 3 lanes both directions, sometimes it's 2 lanes both directions. It serves a hospital zone, business zone, residential zones, and access to the Boise River across the 3 cities. Not long ago, it was only 30,000 cars a day. Now it's near 60,000 cars a day. We did complete a speed survey, and Jason can go into details on that. But it shows drivers are traveling in general at the posted speed limits per the 85th percentile traffic engineering study. What else about Eagle Road? Well, it has a lot of crashes. Almost 2,000 crashes over the last 5 years, according to our Office of Highway Safety stats. 64% of those were between Franklin and Chinden. The majority of those are rear end accidents. And there are some high counts at the intersections, nearly 2,000 crashes, some of the major intersections over the 5-year period. And the mid-block left and U-turn median breaks are also a crash concentration area. And that's our biggest concern. How can we make a change to help drivers travel the corridor safer and have less crashes? So I'll turn it over to Jason to talk about the speed survey and the proposals.
Thank you, Dan. Again, Jason Brinkman. I'm the district engineer for District 3, which includes Southwest Idaho. I think you've seen this slide before. This is the observations of speeds that the public is traveling along the corridor. On this graph, we've shown what the average speeds are in the blue bars. The orange bars represent the drop in speeds that we're getting at peak times, which you can see, while not terribly significant, is there. And then the gray bar is more of a theoretical or estimated free flow. That speed isn't necessarily achieved for long portions of the day, but that would be the prevailing speed if we could best estimate one of what traffic is capable of driving. ITD sets speeds based on something that we call the 85th percentile method. And this is a method that is prescribed to us out of a national standard, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. This is essentially the speed that's just right at what 85% of traffic is going or above. So the 85% of drivers would be below the speed and 15% above. So when we do the speed studies, that's what we're looking for. That's the number. Speed limits are prescribed as far as how we apply those in law and in policy. And speed limits are not arbitrarily set. What the speed study and review showed us is that the speed limits along Eagle Road, while they're not all the same today, there's some 50 and 55 and 40, that they do all appear to be appropriate under our methodology for the current conditions. But we do certainly recognize that those speed limits may not always be attainable during the peak congested periods because of the stopping and the queuing that occurs at intersections. So what we have for you today are 3 categories of recommendations that we are making for improvements to Eagle Road. We constructed the raised medians that are in the center of Eagle Road in the early 2010s, 2013-ish. There were concerns at that time that those medians would turn some access locations into right in, right out, and that could have a negative effect on businesses or drive excessive U-turns. We're happy to report that we haven't noticed that to be the case. The businesses seem to be doing well. People have found ways to get to their destinations, and the U-turn volumes are tolerable at the intersections where they exist today. However, there are 4 pairs of median breaks where there are unsignalized either left-in turns or U-turns that occur in the median. And so there's, all of these are paired one each direction, northbound and southbound. Those locations are at Meadowdale Street, which is just south of McMillan, at Bald Cypress, which is north of Ustick Road. There's a U-turn provision that is immediately south of Ustick Road. And then there is a pair of left-ins at Lanark Street, north of Franklin. Dan mentioned that volumes have grown significantly, and they continue to grow. We are awaiting to see what the effects of new facilities like Highway 16 will have, but all indications are that Eagle Road will continue to appreciate steady growth as population in the valley grows and development continues. As such, we don't think that the issue with those unsignalized median breaks is going to get any better. And so we feel it's appropriate at this time to restrict one direction of movement at each of those 4 locations. And we're picking that direction based on which has a more severe traffic condition. So it's often the case that a signal adjacent to these locations will back up or queue across these locations. And that represents a particular safety concern because drivers awaiting a left turn at those locations can't necessarily see oncoming traffic in the far lanes. So the proposal would be to close southbound left in at Meadowdale, northbound left in at Bald Cypress, the southbound U-turn near Ustick, and the northbound left in at Lanark. Category 2 is what we've titled congestion and speed. And as I mentioned earlier, we think they're related in that it's not always possible to achieve the posted speed during congested periods. We've developed 3 sub-alternatives to consider how we deal with that. One of the notions that we think would help is making sure that at least unfamiliar drivers are alerted to that condition existing. So alternate 2A would put up 10 sets of yellow diamond-shaped warning signs that would read, "Watch for stop traffic." These signs are approximately 4 foot by 4 foot. Underneath of them, much like you might see on a speed-rated curve, would be an advisory placard that would say 45 miles per hour. And above the signs would be a pair of yellow or amber lights that would flash in an alternating fashion to alert drivers to that condition. This option is advisory in nature. We certainly recognize that the warning signs, even with the 45 mile per hour placard, are not citable offenses under normal circumstances. Our second alternative, sub-alternative 2B, was what we call a daily congestion zone. This would include some additional signing that would declare a portion of Eagle Road to be a daily congestion zone, which would be posted on yellow rectangular advisory signs so that motorists would understand that they were in a zone where they would expect congestion. This would be done in conjunction with speed feedback signs that says "your speed is" next to the normal static speed limit sign. So if it said 50 miles per hour, underneath would be a supplemental sign that says "your speed is," and it would read back in real time the speed of the approaching motorist. The intent of this option is to both alert traffic to being in a zone where they should expect congestion, as well as to try to encourage better driver behavior. And this, as well as then, is advisory in nature. The third alternative, the third sub-alternative in category 2, is what we call variable speed limit. Variable in this case refers to a type of a speed limit sign where we take out the portion of the sign where the normal numbers are printed and we replace it with an LED panel. These LED panels can be obtained in different colors. Sometimes in construction zones, they might be yellow lights or orange lights. For the purpose of a speed limit sign, they would be black and white sign panels so that the numbers would appear black and white like they do on an ordinary speed sign. That allows us to change the speed limit throughout the day as conditions warrant. This technology has been used previously, but we're not aware of a use of it to date on a signalized urban arterial. The installations that we're familiar with are on freeways and interstates, where they're normally placed overhead above the road on a sign structure, much like you might see on the interstate for advertising exits and locations. We would propose to do these with roadside signs, which we think are more appropriate for the corridor. And we would set times uniformly throughout the variable speed limit zone so that the signs would change simultaneously and could be monitored remotely. The speeds for ordinary times of day, less congested times of day, would be set at their current posted speeds. And then during congested periods, we would propose that we would lower them to 45 miles per hour, such as from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning and from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. daily. We would base these times based on the traffic congested conditions, so we might adjust these a half hour give or take as we perfect this plan. But the notion would be that they would be the same every day so that they were predictable and knowable as far as people's travel time and their expectations in the corridor. Unlike the advisory signs or warning signs, variable speed limit signs are enforceable in Idaho. So you can get a speeding ticket for these, much like you would a static sign. And we have had successful use of these in some construction work zones on a temporary basis, so we have a little bit of experience with that. We would also add the flashing yellow beacons above the signs. with the intention to turn those on only during periods when the speed is lowered. So in addition to the lower speed, there would also be a visible flashing warning that the speed is lowered at those times. I've got a plot of the entire corridor here that I've chopped up into pieces to show you approximately where those locations of these devices would be. So this is for that option 2C, the variable speed limit. We would, starting here at I-84, north is up on these. We would retain the 50-mile-per-hour zone that's down by St. Luke's today. We would add a warning sign that says watch for stop traffic next 7 miles. And then just north of Franklin Road, this would put the variable speed limit pilot in effect from Franklin Road to Chinden, essentially. So just north of Franklin Road, you would encounter the first variable speed zone sign, notifying that you were in such a zone. Also detailed there and blown up on the left is the detail of how we would close that left in at Lanark for the northbound left turns. You can see we would hatch out the turn lane that's there right now for northbound. Southbound would still be able to use that location. Moving to the north, this is the zone that includes the Fairview and River Valley areas. And you can see the installation there then of these variable speed limit signs. So the black and white signs with the 2 black X's. The black X's is where it would say 45 during congested times or 55 during normal times. We believe it would be prudent to also install these with speed feedback signs. We find those to be very effective in trying to curb driver behavior of folks that might be going a little too fast. And so these would have not only the current speed limit, but also be giving real-time feedback. There's a couple other warning signs and advertising of the speed zone there. You can also see on the left the closure of the southbound U-turn at U-Stick, which is highlighted on the bigger map as the hatched area. This then is the U-Stick and McMillan area as I continue to move north. You can see there the closure of the northbound left in for Bald Cypress and a series of signs, both the variable speed and the warning signs that we would propose to put in the corridor. I'll then move north to the area between McMillan and Chinden. This is showing the end of the variable speed zone just south of Chinden. So there would be signs on all 3 directions approaching Chinden, an eagle, advising of the entrance of that zone, and then additional warning signs as well. And you can see there the closure of the southbound left turn for Meadowdale. And then this is the north end of the corridor where Eagle Road meets State Highway 44 in Eagle. We are retaining the existing 40-mile-per-hour speed on that end and adding a couple warning signs, both watching for stop traffic southbound as well as the 40 ahead northbound. The third category of our recommendations then had to do with signal operations. And Dan mentioned the contract that we entered last year for the traffic expert review of our signal operations. We have recently upgraded all of the signal controllers in the corridor to something that are known as ATPMS signals. That stands for Automated Traffic Performance Management System. And essentially what these controllers do is collect a whole lot of data about how the signal is operating, what kind of cues it's experiencing, and things of that nature. So you might call these smart controllers. The expert review found that ACHD, who is our operating partner on the signals, and ITD were doing a reasonably good job of operating signals in the corridor. They're going to make recommendations for minor tweaks of the signal timing, but not things that most people would be detecting, just a few seconds here or there. There are some future opportunities where we can look at things like emergency vehicle preemptions and how the signals reset after those to try to optimize getting back to the normal operating condition. There is, however, no real expectation of ever having a green light progression all the way through the corridor. The spacing and the volumes that we're dealing with simply don't lend to that on a two-way roadway like Eagle Road. However, there is the possibility that we can get some partial progressions moving through segments of the corridor. And we'll certainly look for those opportunities anywhere we can put those into place. We will also continue to monitor on an ongoing basis those signals and analyze new technologies for bringing every bit of capacity that we can out of the signals in the corridor. So to summarize our 3-point recommendations, we are recommending, for the sake of safety, closing 4 of the 8 median breaks, 1 each at those 4 paired locations, where the left-ins or U-turns are currently leading to the most accidents. We would propose to implement alternative 2C with regard to congestion and speed limits, which would put the variable speed limit zone in place as a pilot from Franklin to Chinden. And then we will work with ACHD to continue to update signal timing and to do the ongoing monitoring in the corridor. With that, Mr. Mayor, council members, we thank you for your time and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jason and Dan. Council, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
first off, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, and rest of council. I'd like to start off, first off, by sharing a thank you to ITD for this presentation. There's a lot of stuff that you guys presented that I totally agree with. I still have some issues with some of it. I've always believed that out of those 2,000 or almost 2,000 crashes we have on Eagle Road, one of the things I keep getting told is speed is not a factor. And speeding, going over the speed limit, that is correct. But I still maintain that the current speed limit of 55 miles an hour is a factor in a lot of those crashes. And I stand by that from all my years of studying crashes. I think that the 45 would not only reduce any fatalities, it would reduce the seriousness of our injuries, it would reduce the damage that we'd have in a lot of crashes, and in some cases could completely eliminate some crashes we have today. Because you mentioned that most of them are following too close. And the problem we have, and I drive that road almost every day, is currently, many times of the day, not just in the times that you've set aside, we will have drivers who are in a 30 or 35 mile per hour traffic jam and see a break ahead of them, and they rush to get back up to that 55 mile an hour speed limit. Only a short time later, they dynamite the brakes because we're coming up on the traffic in front of us. And most of the problems we have with those following too close accidents, I believe from the bottom of my heart, is the fact that we have 2 factors at play here. We have the time it takes for those drivers to react to what's happening in front of them, coupled with the time it takes for their vehicle to stop. And when you add those 2 factors together at 55 miles an hour, it's a long distance. And I think a lot of drivers have a hard time figuring out what that distance is. And I won't go into the whole thing I gave last time you were there, because I brought in a lot of the facts from highway traffic safety, having to do with the difference in the amount of inertia from a 45 mile an hour stop to a 55 mile an hour stop. I'm still pushing for 45 all the way through that corridor. Make no bones about it. That is my ultimate goal. But based on the presentation that you've given today, I think it's only fair that we let ITD offer up something like option 2C, but I would ask something very important of you. I think a 2-hour zone is way too short. I think you've got too many people, especially to all of the restaurants and businesses we've got, that could be going down Eagle Road at 45, having dinner, getting back on Eagle Road, and it's now 55. I'd like to see an extra hour added to each one of those and make those a minimum of 4-hour time zones in the morning and in the evening, or in the heaviest traffic times, at least 4 hours. And then we can start to study as we go through this, what that accident data looks like through those times and through the unregulated times when it comes to accident stats. I do commend you for the 4 left turn movements that will be further restricting. It's not a very popular opinion, but I have been supporting those medians since the beginning, from when we were first trying to eliminate 34 injury crashes coming out of Magic View onto Eagle Road, just north of the freeway. And we did that. It went from 34 to 0. I truly believe that can do a lot of help in reducing some of those crashes. But I think the only way we're going to really substantially make a change in a lot of these rear end accidents is by lowering those speeds. And if that takes going with option 2C, that may be the only way that we can study that and come to some form of agreement in the future that that's what it's going to take. Again, what I want to see is 45 straight across. I don't think it's fair to the drivers to have different speed limits during the day. I think it's tougher on our law enforcement folks, and I'm not sure how that's going to be taken in some cases in front of our local magistrates when they get a ticket for a road that, quite frankly, they could be driving on, and it could be 55 and it could change to 45 while they're on it. So I'll leave it at that for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Upton. Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council member. We appreciate your comments. And we did want to emphasize that the hours of the variable speed at 45 miles an hour, we're still looking at, so we appreciate those comments. We, as a team, the team really liked the opportunity to have a safety corridor beyond just talking about speed limits. The number one thing for the traffic engineering team that's looked at this is those mid-block accident issues. And so we appreciate supportive comments there, because it's not easy to do, but having opportunities at the signalized intersections to get to businesses or do a U-turn signalized, we thought there were some good options there. And having a safety corridor gives us an opportunity to let drivers know whether it's daytime, nighttime, bad weather, and when they see the variable speed zone signage and whether or not it's a variable speed at that time, hey, there's something different up ahead. If I don't know this corridor, or if I'm taking too many risks on this corridor, I need to think safety. So watch for stop traffic signage is still part of the package, just because we're trying to guide them. This is a different corridor. This is very unique for Idaho, and this variable speed limit package, as Jason said, it's unique on an arterial nationwide. But our success here in our District 3 and down in Twin Falls area and up in Coeur d'Alene with the variable speed limits and speed feedback together in construction zones has shown ISP and ITD really good progress. So we'll bring it to this safety corridor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
a quick question, and I appreciate the presentation. How do you account for, by closing off some of those left turn, right turns in the mid breaks? You're probably going to end up having more U-turns now at those intersections. Do you have an estimate what that may look like? How do you kind of accommodate that? Do you have a longer protected left turn to allow that? I'm just kind of curious how you factor in some of the, excuse me, pushing those U-turns and such to the intersections as opposed to allowing them in the road, which, by the way, I think is a good idea. A little scary sometimes to do a U-turn in the middle of a Eagle Road, but I'd just like to know how you would accommodate some of those changes.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, great question. There are opportunities to estimate and model what those will look like. We certainly adjust green times or protected lefts accordingly. Unfortunately, those type of closures are a little bit hard to predict because it has a lot to do with what choices people have in their travel pattern. So if you're, used to stopping at your favorite C-store in the morning for a soda or a coffee, and you know that option isn't available any longer, you might take a different path to get there. Maybe you go out of your subdivision a different way, or you route your trip a little bit differently. And so it's not a one-for-one. It's not that every left turner at one of those breaks is going to make a U-turn now. Some of them will more broadly reroute themselves. But it's one of the things that we'll certainly be monitoring. If we were to close those locations, we'll be monitoring what the result of traffic is, and we'll make adjustments to signal timing and things accordingly.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
I agree completely with Councilman Overton's comments. I don't think it goes far enough, but I do think it's going at least in the right direction. So I appreciate that component of it. The variable speed limit, I think could create a lot of confusion for people. But I'm hoping that the signage and everything will help with that. I just want to hear from you if you're committed that with this pilot, we're all going to have a subsequent meeting to talk about the results of it. Because, I think that's really important data to try to gather. I do think lengthening those windows makes sense. I think ultimately the whole corridor should be 45. I mean, I don't, just knowing the safety factor, we've talked about this in our last meeting, so I don't think my comments are a huge surprise to you, but with the severity of crashes and what we've seen and how it's impacting our community, the closure of the 4 unprotected left turns, that does help a lot. But I remain concerned about the speed limit. But I do appreciate that this is at least an incremental change that attempts to move in that direction. I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping you were going to announce that we were changing the speed limit on Eagle Road. But again, I appreciate it. It is moving in the right direction.
Council member, to address your question with regard to the pilot, we do fully intend to collect data during that period. We would be happy to come back and share what our observations are about how that's working and what the results been.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
And Jason, thanks for coming back. I know last time you were here, we're a little spicy. It's a lot of passion because we care, and I appreciate you staying committed. So one of the things that I learned sitting up here is that we're rarely an expert on anything. We rely on subject matter experts to advise us, to help us form an opinion and a decision. And certainly ITD is a subject matter expert when it comes to transportation and moving vehicles. Our police department, right, they're our subject matter expert when it comes to traffic safety. And so I'm curious, have you had a chance to share kind of what you're proposing with our law enforcement department, with the other jurisdictions? What has been the response from our law enforcement community about what you're proposing?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council Member. Yeah, well, we had an opportunity to sit with the mayor and the chief deputy and Captain Stokes on Friday to go through the options that we have. And had some great feedback from Captain Stokes, particularly about the enforceability of the variable speed limit signs versus the enforceability or the confusion it may be for drivers when they see a black on yellow versus black on white signage. So we took that very seriously, and we're coordinating closely with Idaho State Police as well. And both have had representatives on the working group since 2022, and that's been essential for us. And I can't remember who said it at the last meeting, but it's the 3 E's. It's the education of the drivers as they're driving through, and sometimes just having a meeting like this that's public, and the 2 public open houses we plan is great safety meeting, discussion, and hopefully some good coverage on a good subject for all of us. And it's enforcement and engineering, so that we've really tried to blend those well and be sure that we're not arbitrarily setting speed limits, but working within the code for variable speed limits and making a difference for drivers on such a long corridor. So yes, we've been teaming together.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh.
I guess I'm curious, did they provide, is this something that they feel that they can support? They are supportive, they're excited about this. You mentioned too, there's 2 other jurisdictions involved, City of Boise. What's the Boise Police Department's response to this? What's our Sheriff's Department response to this? They all are charged with, keeping our streets and roads safe. And to me, anything that we're going to want to roll out, it's important to me that it is supported by our law enforcement community.
I know as a district, the team has met with Eagle and Boise staff over the last year. And part of this outreach, we'll be sure to confirm that both the Boise PD and Eagle PD.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, additional question then if I may.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Yeah, because you touched on this as a pilot, which I think is prudent. I know when I've done pilots in my professional capacity, we're doing this because we think we've got a plan that's going to achieve a successful outcome. What are the benchmarks that you guys are going to use to determine if this pilot was successful or wasn't successful?
Well, the first benchmark is the crash data. And we've been consistent over the last 5 years at averaging close to 400 crashes on the corridor a year. And this is our opportunity to do something different. And it's going to be very visible to drivers. And that's good. And that supports us from the engineering side, the education side, as well as hopefully from the enforcement side. Just flipping the speed limit signs, we just don't see, other than setting arbitrary speed limits, which is always a concern for folks, we don't see that same safety benefit on the corridor addressing those crash numbers. And the volumes are going to continue to grow, so we'll have to monitor that. And we plan to pilot it for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, and work closely with city staff from all 3 cities and our Office of Highway Safety, and hopefully make changes that make a difference and lower those crash numbers.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
And Dan, I appreciate that. And you've heard from a couple of my colleagues who are much smarter than I am voicing their support of 45. Again, not being an expert, that seems to make sense to me. You all as transportation experts say that this approach is the best approach. And again, I tend to trust the experts. I just think Dan, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it does seem like that maybe there's some more communication that needs to happen with our police departments. And so I guess my hope would be is before any of this is deployed, that we've got enthusiastic buy-in from our law enforcement community on that. And I hope that we can rely on you as transportation experts who want to create safe roads, that you're working with those that are going to be in charge with the enforcement, and make sure this is something they can be excited about.
Thank you, Councilman. We will. And we've got some time. We don't plan to get to a final implementation of this until next spring.
Okay.
And then once we do, we think it'll only take a couple of months to get it deployed, starting with the simple watching for stop traffic signage. And we plan to do it as cost efficiently as possible. We've got some great electrical engineers in-house and some great maintenance team in District 3. It's just a matter of us. We're going to get some good comments too, I think, at the open houses as well as tonight. And so we'll circle back around with all 3 cities and their staff as well.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you.
Councilman Bullock.
I'm a simple guy, and I'm just wondering, you mentioned the electrical engineers, and are these variable speed limit signs solar powered, or do you have to hardwire them? And I'm just thinking about flashing amber lights, yellow rectangular signs, black and white variable speed limits, and all of that, thinking, wouldn't it just be easier to put up a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone?
It wouldn't be as effective. So the advice from the team is let's do something that's going to affect those crash numbers. Those variable speed limit signs, we're looking at 48 by 60s, which are the larger version, with the beacons on top, and also the speed feedback signs will be, I think they're 36 by 48. They're just a little smaller. My bet is the speed feedback sign gives us the bigger benefit. Most people, even on our team initially when we first started this, said, what's the speed limit on Eagle Road? Most people that we work with, most family members, what's the speed limit on Eagle Road? Most people don't quite know it off the top of their head. So it'll help us to have the variable speed limit as part of the package, I think, from engineering as well as enforcement, but it's the awareness of safety. And the awareness that the next 6 miles can be very congested. And the intersections can be very busy. And they may not realize that the crash data, some of our intersections, 150, 200 crashes over the 5-year period. That's just, I mean, when you go through it, you don't see the crashes, but law enforcement does, emergency responders do. So that's what we're trying to tackle, is the crash history. And this will help.
Well, so here, a couple comments for consideration moving forward. I think that there is a fair amount of the stuff that does need to continue to be worked through the work group and maybe even some processes. You know, as Mr. Wallach said, simple man. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing with the work in our fire department is we've taken several incremental steps that allows us to determine maybe what changes are actually improving certain elements. Maybe you start with the variable speed limit signs without the feedback signs for 6 months. See what you get before you go that direction. But I think even those are some good conversations to have with law enforcement. Because I don't disagree. You put up 3 different things on one signs. What are we looking for? There's 3 lanes of traffic. How many people actually can see is it going to be them? Is it going to be somebody else? Just that's my initial thoughts based on some of the other ones. The other thing is also, I think when you showcase the speed data, I'm going to challenge you on one more thing. Lower to 45 when you get off the interstate. The data allows that to exist from what you've showcased. That's not arbitrary. The data can support 45 miles per hour from the interstate up until where you would have the variable speed zone. That way you don't have people getting off going up to 50, then dropping down to 45. Even during those hours of the day, if you just make it 45, like the data would be supportive of, that's at least a small, consistent number so that you don't have an up and down when you have that variable speed limit. So that's one small win, I think, for the community towards the longer goal of all of us up here of going towards what we think is an appropriate speed limit of 45 miles per hour. But let's let the data showcase that. You know, while you talk about the severity of crashes, every crash is severe to our police department and the time that they have to spend on every accident on that road. Lower speed limits will reduce that. We know that. What can be avoided in 10 miles per hour for those that actually follow the speed limit, I don't want to guess, but I'm going to say it's going to be one fewer than is currently on there. And each one of those saves our officers time, our taxpayers money, and a lot of heartache and impact that may be life altering, even though it doesn't seem severe on the numbers. You know, I don't know how severity gets, whiplash where someone's impacted for the rest of their life due to a sore back. Is that severe or not compared to a death, a fatality? It is all severe. So how we get to the point where we actually articulate the value and the impacts regarding cost, severity, taxpayers, et cetera, that's where we want to go. And that's why I do want to, you and I, we talked last week, and I appreciate this update a lot more than the update last week in this context, that it is a step in the right direction, and it's a step where hopefully the data will prove to you about that even though the traffic flow may be different, but the accident reduction will hopefully showcase that, yes, despite the rate of travel speed study, this has the greater long-term and hits your number one element, which is in your mission statement, which is safety before mobility. I don't know if you guys, that's how you rate them, but it is number one in that context, and we'll prove that up. So I appreciate you bringing this forward at this time, and hopefully we can get something, as you mentioned, no later than next spring. If we can move it forward faster, let's do it. Let's not wait. Don't let anything burn by. I understand you got budgets you may have to work through and time along with other projects, so appreciate it very much. All right, look forward to working with you. Okay. Council, we've reached the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mayor?
Councilman Cameron? Motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Mr. Overton, enjoy your vacation.
I'm going right back to it. Thank you.
Council will call the meeting to order. For the record, it is June 4th, 2024 at 6:03 PM. We'll begin tonight's regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts, Councilman Taylor, Councilwoman Strader, Councilman Whitlock,
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge. Next up is our community invocation, which tonight will be delivered by Daryl Zachman. If you would all please join us in the community invocation or take this as a moment of silence and reflection.
Thank you, Mayor Simison, City Council members, for the opportunity. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for blessing our city, protecting us from harm. We thank you for the leadership you have given us. We thank you for the freedom of our nation. We thank you for Mayor Simison and the City Council members, and for the privilege of coming to your throne of grace and asking for wisdom, mercy, and help in our times of need. We pray that you will oversee the business at hand tonight, help our council members to uphold justice, equality, and integrity in all of their decisions. Keep us from all forms of self-centeredness and self-importance. And as our Lord taught us, help us to do to others as we would want them to do to us. We pray that your kingdom would come and your will would be done on earth and in Meridian as it is in heaven. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Up next is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
no need to make any changes with a fairly short agenda, so I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Mr. Clerk, anyone send up under public forum?
Mr. Mayor, no.
Okay, then we will move right on into our first item this evening, which will be a proclamation in support of local Idaho Gyms Day. I have Sydney join me at the podium. They want our best side for the camera, so. So council, we are here tonight to read a proclamation supporting local Idaho gyms, which is an initiative that's being led by Senator Jim Risch. So I will go and read the proclamation. I'll turn this over to Sydney for any remarks. So, whereas small businesses are an integral part of the fabric of our community, contributing to the vibrancy, diversity, and economic prosperity of Meridian, Idaho. And whereas these businesses, each with their unique offerings, serve as the backbone of our local economy, providing employment opportunities, showcasing creativity, and offering invaluable goods and services that enrich the lives of our residents. And whereas our community, united in our responsibility, is called upon to support small businesses that make a profound impact on our economy. And whereas the Support Local Gyms initiative aims to celebrate and bolster Idaho's small businesses with the collaboration and support of Idaho's chambers of commerce, business associations, elected officials, small businesses across the gym state, and all Idahoans. And whereas on Friday, June 7th, 2024, the city of Meridian joins in this statewide celebration, encouraging all residents to show their love and support for our local small businesses. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert E. Simpson, hereby proclaim June 7th, 2024 as Support Local Idaho Gyms Day. In Meridian, we urge all residents to participate in this initiative by patronizing our small businesses, dining at local restaurants, shopping at neighborhood retailers, and expressing gratitude to the businesses that contribute to the vitality of our economy. Dated this 4th day of June, 2024. So on behalf of the city of Meridian, please accept this proclamation with our sincere appreciation and gratitude.
Just want to say thank you to Mayor Simison and the city of Meridian. Senator Rich started this initiative 5 years ago. Just wanted to show a way of supporting small businesses after COVID. And this truly has been a remarkable initiative that just continues to grow and grow every year. We're really excited for the Idahoans to get on board and go out and support businesses this Friday and whatever these small businesses may be. And they really are, like you said, in the proclamation, the backbone of our community and make the great state of Idaho. So thank you, Mayor. We appreciate the support.
Moving on to our action items for this evening. Item 2 is a public hearing for Pebblebrook subdivision H 2024-005. We'll open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The first application before you tonight is a request for annexation and zoning and a preliminary plat. This site consists of 13.94 acres of land. It's owned RUT in Ada County and is located at 5725 North Meridian Road. The comprehensive plan future land use designation for this property is medium density residential, which allows residential densities at 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. And it also has a future park designation on it. There has been some public comments pertaining to the park designation, so I would like to provide some information on that. All future symbols shown on the future land use map, including parks, represent generalized locations. They are not parcel specific. The designation was shown on this property because it's one of the last remaining undeveloped parcels in the square mile, which has no existing public parks that's large enough for a city park. Because the property owner hasn't offered to donate the land to the city for a park, and because the city isn't prepared to buy the land with the other parks and projects that's currently planned for the impact fee fund, staff is not recommending a park is provided within this development. There are a couple of schools, Paramount Elementary and Rocky Mountain High School, and several HOA parks, Paramount, Crosby, Kingsley, to name a few in the vicinity, as well as Settlers Park, which is 1.5 miles to the south that serve this area. The applicant is requesting annexation of 13.94 acres of land with an R8 zoning district and a preliminary plat to subdivide the property into 54 building lots and 6 common lots. Proposed lots range in size from approximately 1/8 of an acre to 1/3 of an acre, with an average lot size of little over 1/8 of an acre, which will accommodate the variety of dwelling sizes proposed, ranging from 1,574 to 3,195 square feet. The proposed density is 3.87 units per acre, which is at the low end of the density desired in the medium density residential designated areas of 3 to 8 units per acre. For comparison, the adjacent Paramount subdivision is 2.8 units per acre overall and contains a mix of lot sizes and housing types consisting of single-family residential detached homes, attached townhomes, and apartments. The subdivision is proposed to develop in one phase. The existing structures will be removed upon development of the property. A revised plat was submitted as shown prior to the commission hearing that addresses staff's comments by providing a better lot transition to existing lots to the south with no more than a 2-to-1 ratio. ACHD is requiring Meridian Road to be improved with 17 feet of pavement from center line with a 3-foot gravel shoulder and 10-foot wide detached sidewalk. Only 6 feet of pavement and a 3-foot wide shoulder is required at this time. Curb and gutter will be added later when Meridian Road is fully improved. Access is proposed via the extension of existing public streets, North Garbo Avenue at the north and south boundaries of the property. Local public streets are proposed for internal access. No access is proposed or allowed from Meridian Road. A stub street is proposed to the county parcel to the northeast corner of this property for future extension and interconnectivity. Bulb outs are provided along Gleason Street for traffic calming in response to ACHD's comments requiring Gleason to be redesigned to reduce the length or include passive design elements. A 35-foot wide street buffer is required along North Meridian Road, an entryway corridor measured from the ultimate back of curb. All fencing is required to comply with UDC standards. A minimum of 15% or 2.09 acres of qualified open space is required to be provided within the development. An open space exhibit was submitted as shown that depicts 16.16% or 2.25 acres of common open space that meets and exceeds the required standards. A minimum of 2 points of site amenities are required to be provided. The applicant is proposing 2 pickleball courts, which are 8 points each, and 2 dog waste stations, 8 points total, and 2 dog waste stations for 1 point, which total 9 points, meeting and exceeding the required standards. 5 conceptual building elevations were submitted for the proposed 1- and 2-story homes with 2- and 3-car garages. The homes are craftsman style with building materials consisting of a mix of board and batten siding, lap siding, and optional masonry accents. The applicant clarified that optional masonry accents depicted on the elevations is incorrect and that all homes will have masonry accents consistent with the Paramount architectural guidelines. To ensure this, for a higher quality of development, staff is recommending masonry accents are required on all structures in the development as a provision of the development agreement. The commission did recommend approval of these applications to the city council, and I'll just go through a summary of the commission hearing. Ben Semple, the applicant, testified in favor of the application. There were quite a few folks that testified in opposition and commented on the application, and those are contained in the staff report and the hearing outline for tonight. Written testimony was received from the applicant. He is in agreement with the staff report conditions. There was a petition with approximately 90 signatures submitted to reduce the number of homes in the subdivision to the same ratio as Paramount. The key issues were as follows. Not in favor of the plat as proposed. Opinion the density is too high and not consistent with that in Paramount subdivision. Concern pertaining to the impact of traffic generated from this development on internal streets in Paramount subdivision. Request for construction methods and materials to match those in Paramount subdivision. Not in favor of this development being part of the Paramount subdivision HOA, as it's not the same quality of development, and opinion that it will bring home values down. And concern pertaining to overcrowding in area schools. The key issues of discussion by the commission were as follows. Clarification that if this development isn't included in the Paramount subdivision HOA, it can still stand on its own so far as meeting the city's development requirements. No concerns pertaining to capacity at area schools, as there are several private schools in addition to public schools in this area that will assist in serving this development. And opinion that the proposed subdivision is thoughtfully laid out with a maximum 2-to-1 ratio, a lot transition at the perimeter boundary, and has good walkability and nice open space that exceeds the minimum standards. The commission did not make any changes to the staff recommendation, and there are no outstanding issues for council tonight. The project complies with the city's comprehensive plan and meets and exceeds UDC standards for common open space and site amenities. There has been some written testimony submitted since the commission hearing, and those are contained in the public record. The applicant is here to testify on this project for tonight. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sonia. Council, any questions for staff? Okay, then would the applicant like to come forward?
Hey, Mr. Mayor?
Nope.
Just before the applicant presents, you just want to give me just 15 seconds of privilege. I think it's important before we start to hear from the applicant. I know I, like the rest of council, had the opportunity to review the minutes before tonight's meeting. I'm sure that you may have drawn some of the same conclusions I drew. There's a lot of passion and enthusiasm about this project. And so I know passion comes from a place of care on both sides. And so whether you've lived in Meridian your whole life or have just moved here recently or somewhere in between, we just ask tonight that you're respectful, you're kind, we're neighborly. We all are neighbors regardless of where we live. And so I just would encourage that both from the applicant as well as the public that are providing testimony tonight, that we are all Meridian residents and we all are neighbors. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you. Appreciate the privilege.
Okay, thank you. Good evening,
Mr. Mayor,
either one.
both of them. Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I appreciate the time. Appreciate Sonia's presentation. She did a great job. I just want to reinforce some of the items that are part of this application. I also want to restate, we are in agreement with all this, the terms and conditions of the staff report, as well as all the agency letters that we've received up to this point. So we are requesting, as Sonia had stated, we are requesting annexation and zoning of a 13.94 acre parcel located at 5725 North Meridian Road. The application also includes a preliminary plat for the development of 60 total lots, 54 buildable, and 6 common lots to be created for the construction of 54 single-family detached residential homes, along with all of the associated roadway, utility, landscape, and site improvements. Some of the conversations we had, you know, a lot of it was centered around density. A lot of it was centered around appropriateness or cohesivity with the adjacent Paramount subdivision. And part of that had to do with some of the landscape installation. We have a full arborist report that was done on the project site. It identified all of the caliper inches that need to be mitigated for upon removal. We're fully mitigating for anything that's removed with the common area space landscaping. So anything additional that's planted on private lots, trees in front and backyards is just over and above that. We have determined, and I've also been talking with the city forester or arborist. He's part of this urban wood network that I have been tied into, that they do reclamation of urban timber. And so I'm talking to that company about going out and evaluating some of the larger caliper trees for reclamation of the wood so that it doesn't just get chopped up into firewood or chipped up into bark and sent to the landfill. We will be planting 101 trees within the common open space. That's 181 caliper inches, as well as 198 vertical feet of conifers, so 6 foot minimum height. We also have 245 shrubs that will be added to the common area spaces. And like I stated, that is independent of anything that's done around the individual homes when they get built. The requested annexation, zoning, and preliminary plat are compatible with the land use, both adjacent and on this site. Even with that park designation that was removed prior to my client purchasing this property, the underlying land use still remains medium density residential, whether or not there was a park identified for that site. Had they been told that this was a park that needed to be developed here, they definitely wouldn't have pursued this project on the site or pursued purchasing the land from the previous owner that had gifted it to the church, who then turned around and sold it again because they didn't want to develop it. The R8 zoning designation is being requested, which matches all of Paramount surrounding, as well as the subdivisions to the east of Meridian Road. The out parcel to the north that's right along Meridian Road at the northeast corner of this parcel is still an enclave within Ada County, and is not part of this development project. Care was taken with the site design, lot sizes, and open space to ensure compatibility with the adjacent Paramount subdivision. The architecture and materials will conform with the Paramount architectural control and design standards, which include specific provisions regarding exterior elevations, colors, accent materials, lighting, fencing, and landscaping. All existing perimeter fencing around this property will be retained and protected or replaced by my client, the developer, and they will coordinate with any affected neighbors there. Any fencing internal to this development will also meet all of the Paramount subdivision requirements for height, materials, and color. So it'll be very cohesive. Public roads, as were stated, are proposed to access for all the homes, a 33-foot back-to-back road section with a 5-foot attached sidewalk within a 47-foot right-of-way that conforms with ACHD standards. We have proposed attached sidewalks here to provide additional depth in the driveways. Street trees will be installed behind the sidewalk, meeting ACHD standards of a minimum 5-foot offset from the back of walk. Those would be installed after homes are built. A lot of times when these subdivisions are getting built and street trees are put in prior to home construction, they end up getting damaged during by contractor activity along the streets. The public street to the east will be stubbed to that northern enclave parcel in Ada County for in the event that that property does redevelop and that could be extended through there. No connection to Meridian Road was proposed, and that is part of ACHD and City of Meridian policy restricting access to arterial roadways and requiring access to come from the lesser classified roadway when available. That would be Garbo Avenue. They do go through the Paramount subdivision. All of the roads within Paramount, with the exception of a few private roads, are public roads. Meridian Road will be improved with pavement and roadside drainage swale, a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway. An additional right-of-way will be dedicated, and the improvements will be installed so that they comply with the future curb and gutter that would be installed by ACHD when they widen Meridian Road fully. Open lawn areas will be included within the interior common spaces, which provide for active and passive recreation. The development agreement will contain a provision that a minimum of 2.25 acres of qualified open space will be contained within this development. And the amenities proposed within this subdivision, as Sonia had stated, 2 full-size pickleball courts, the open grassy areas, micro pathways, the Meridian Road buffer, 2 pet waste stations. We have a total triple the required amount of amenity points in here. The amenities were specifically selected to complement the adjacent Paramount subdivision amenities instead of duplicating them. During the lead up to this and the planning process, we did meet with the Paramount subdivision HOA board just to get some feedback from them on what they thought about lot sizes, home sizes, architectural style, which is when the developer decided to adopt basically fully adopt the Paramount CC&Rs and architectural standards for their subdivision. That is in place regardless of what the HOA board decides or the full HOA membership decides, if that ends up getting taken to a vote of the full HOA membership. This Pebblebrook subdivision can be its own and nothing would change. It would be the same as what is being proposed at this point with all of the Paramount CC&Rs and everything incorporated. The one part that we talked with the Paramount HOA board about was pressurized irrigation. This property has a surface water right that exceeds the demand that we need for the future landscaping, both the provisions for the individual lots as well as for the common open space. It's not a lot more, but there's a gallon per minute of surface water rights that wouldn't be necessary. In talking with the HOA board, we're exploring transferring that water right to the Paramount HOA, connecting to their pressurized irrigation system, and then having that water be included with their delivery. I know that there has been some issues in the past with their irrigation systems kind of going down or running out, depending on the time of year. And so we felt like this was a good addition to their system and provides them even a little bit of additional water over what this space would require. During the neighborhood meeting, there was approximately 30 attendees. Discussion involved concerns about density, traffic during and after construction, parking, privacy, property values, cohesiveness with existing homes, and impacts to existing amenities within the Paramount subdivision. Timing of construction and access to Meridian Road were also points that we talked about with the neighbors at the meeting. And while the subdivision will be built along public road or Meridian Road, the existing public roads that are stubbed were always planned to be extended through the site. Let's see. The homes proposed here will have either 2 or 3 car garages. All of the lots are set up to accommodate a 3-car garage. So they're not pick and choose which lot. whoever buys a lot can have a 3-car garage if they'd like one, along with driveways that are 20-foot deep. And there's additional on-street parking specifically along the northern boundary of the project where there aren't homes adjacent to some of the common open space there. Let's see, we talked about adopting the Paramount subdivision CCNRs. The proposed lot sizes range from 5,250 square feet with a couple larger, about 5 lots that are larger than 10,000 square feet, with the largest being 15,482 square feet. If I take out the 5 larger kind of standalone large lots, the average lot size is 6,250 square feet for the remaining, what would that be, 49. The existing Paramount subdivision also has a wide range of lot sizes, the smallest being approximately 4,315 square feet, and home sizes that are both 1 and 2 story, with sizes ranging from 1,500 square feet to over 5,000 square feet. Originally, the Pebblebrook subdivision had proposed 1 and 2 story homes with a maximum size of 2,968 square feet. After the neighborhood meeting with concerns about home sizes and cohesivity with Paramount Homes and property values, the Hayden Homes team, which is the developer of this, increased the maximum size of the home to 3,195 square feet. I do want to take a moment as well to talk about some of the architectural design that Hayden has developed. They build homes throughout the Pacific Northwest, not just in the Treasure Valley, and they have developed what they're referred to as a luxury design package, which is what is included in all of the homes that will be built within Pebblebrook. So this isn't, Hayden has been known for doing entry-level homes a lot. This is not that product. This is a much more elevated product. You could see in a lot of the architectural elevations, they all have a stone on there. That is required. That's not optional. So I do want to reinforce that as well. And we also feel like these home sizes, not only being compatible in the area, immediate area, but it also reinforces some of what we heard from planning and zoning as well as city council on other projects regarding the desire to provide a variety of home sizes so that it appeals to a variety or a wider range of home buyers in the Meridian area. And this would also allow for generational living within this area, where you could have a small home as your family grows, buy a larger one, and as your kids grow and leave, you can find a smaller home and not leave this very desirable area of Meridian. Like I said, there was a lot of concern about traffic during construction, as well as after. We are working with ACHD to get a construction access off of Meridian Road for the infrastructure installation. We're also talking with them about maintaining some sort of access for home construction that would come off of Meridian Road so that not all construction traffic would come through the Paramount subdivision streets. And then once the homes are all built, that would be closed off, and the development is intending to start late this year for infrastructure site work, with homes starting in spring of 2025. We did get some positive feedback during the neighborhood meeting and some phone calls and emails afterwards, as well as some positive feedback after the P&Z hearing here at the city. And ultimately, the developer and the design team feel very good about this project and feel that this will be a positive addition to this area through the thoughtful infill redevelopment of the site, and continue to enhance the underutilized spaces within Meridian. I'd stand for any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
So I'm curious about the feedback that you've been getting. You said that you had received some positive feedback. I know, looking through the public testimony, I mean, there are at least 80 signatures opposing the project and a lot of, I think, concern. Help me understand how you have tried to adapt your application in response to those concerns. Like, I see, for example, the masonry accents, right, to complement the surrounding neighborhood. That makes sense to me. I do see some things, though, like you have attached sidewalks. You're surrounded on three sides by a neighborhood that has detached sidewalks. Help walk me through in a little bit greater detail how you're trying to, at least have a good transition with the surrounding neighborhood.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strader. So yeah, the first part was really working with the Paramount HOA board to talk with them and review their CCNRs and architectural control so that we could look at the style of the homes to make sure that they're matching what Paramount expects to see out of homes that are built in their subdivision. We have really worked at increasing the amount of open space on this site over what is required. There was a couple initial concepts that, looking at the densities and the ranges that are allowable in R8 that had 60 homes, one that had 58 homes on it. And ultimately we dropped to 54 to make sure that we can get that 2-to-1 ratio maximum along the exterior, as well as increase that open space to get that in there. In terms of the attached versus detached sidewalks, our concern was that it reduces parking within, because these are all front-loaded lots. There's not a lot of alley load. It could reduce the available parking. And I know that parking is always an issue for residents and guests. If people come over, you'd like to have somewhere not on the street for them to park, to leave that open if possible. And so that's why that decision was made. Ultimately, it was supported by ACHD as we met one of their road section standards. And we're not saying that this is Paramount. We're not exactly Paramount. But we're trying as hard as we can to match everything they have while also looking at how to provide a bigger home, larger driveway. And we did adjust some home sizes in terms of trying to get them a little bit larger in response to neighbors. Some of the positives that we got was we heard from a few different people that there was either a condo or a townhome or a multifamily project proposed for this site at one point in time. Got a lot of calls saying we're really glad that this is single-family detached homes that are more cohesive with immediately adjacent. So that's sort of the positive that we got.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
I just have a few more questions. So I was curious about, you kind of went through the trees and the shrubs, but that's an interesting example. So, those all pertain to the common areas, right? So for example, in the Paramount neighborhood, you have to have a certain number of trees in your front yard. You said that you're planning to mirror all of the CCNRs of that subdivision. So are you planning for similar landscaping is just one example?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strader, yes. So the CCNRs from Paramount, they'll just have a name change on them, or if they adopt us into their HOA, we would just be Paramount, whatever. And so there will be the same number of trees in the front yard, same number of trees in the backyard as the minimums. So if someone that buys a home wants to do more or over and above that, they could, but it would follow those guidelines exactly.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
So besides the attached sidewalks, what are the differences between this subdivision and the Paramount subdivision?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strader, I don't see a lot. I mean, are the lots all as large as the ones immediately adjacent? No, but they're also not all as small as some of the smallest lots within Paramount. It's got a good range. The homes are all basically exactly like the homes that are built in Paramount right now. So the difference is this doesn't have a pool, but it also, Paramount doesn't have pickleball courts. So we're trying to get something that Paramount residents could use and, as an additional amenity within their subdivision, if we get into their subdivision. And even if we're not adopted into the HOA, there's not like this is going to be a gated community, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
You made a comment I thought was kind of interesting. You said at one point this was planned to be a park. When you look at the comprehensive plan, there's a symbol for a park. Was that, did you receive guidance that changed? Were you just referring to the city's plans? I know, like, if you check, and just for those in the audience, if if you check through the folder for the application, there's quite a bit of back and forth between myself and the parks director, just trying to understand why is this not an ideal site for a park, et cetera. But from your perspective, has something officially changed from the city's perspective? Where did that comment come from?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strader, when we went in for a pre-app and actually had some due diligence prior to the purchase, prior to Hayden Homes buying the property, the city had evaluated it, talked to the Parks Department, and they said that a park wasn't viable here. Because of, and I have that notice from the Parks Department director regarding visibility from Meridian. I know that the previous owner, before it changed hands a couple times, she had talked about it being a park. But ultimately, when she passed, my understanding is that it was bequeathed to the Catholic diocese, and then they decided that they were going to sell it because it was a remnant parcel that they owned at that point. And in our conversations with city staff, they said, yeah, we've talked about it and it's not a viable spot. We've got Settlers Park that's close, a lot of other parks within the subdivisions around there, private, not public, but they basically told us that that wasn't, it was a generalized location for a potential park, but it wasn't specifically identified as only a park, and the land use underneath it was medium density residential.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
just one more. Yeah, I think where I'm getting hung up, I heard Sonia, you made a comment. This is one of the last undeveloped parcels. I think this is the last. Are there more than this one?
I don't believe so.
Ma'am, everything's gonna be on the record. If you want to testify about that when it's your turn, you're more than welcome to.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I'm sure in the Orchard Park development, we did have some space put aside there for some public amenities from what I recall, but thank you. No, that's helpful. That's it for my questions for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilman Taylor.
Ben, one question I have in the staff report, talking about the ratio of homes in Paramount and then your proposed development. And I'm going to read this off, and if you need the map to look at, that's fine. But in the staff report, it talks about lots 7 through 9, block 2 abutting lot 10, block 49 in Paramount 21, and lots 10 through 12, block 2 abutting 2 lots in Bordeaux Estates to the south, where 3 lots abut 1 lot. And staff is recommending that we revise that to have a maximum of a 2-to-1 ratio instead of the 3-to-1. Did you accommodate that request in the current application in terms of revising the number of lots abutting the existing development?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, yes, the preliminary plat was adjusted so that there is no case where there's more than 2-to-1 lot ratio.
Thank you.
Council, any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Mr. Clerk, who do we have sign up this evening?
Mr. Mayor, first we have on Zoom, Sally Reynolds. Sally, you should be able to unmute.
And just for everyone, when you come up and speak, you'll be recognized for 3 minutes unless you're representing an HOA. If you can please state your name and address for the record when you do come up. Sally?
Certainly. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, wonderful. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of Meridian City Council. My name is Sally Reynolds. I reside at 1166 West Bacall Street in Meridian, Idaho. I'd like to speak tonight in support of the Pebblebrook subdivision. So I am a Paramount resident, and it is a wonderful change to see something other than high density plan for the outskirts of our neighborhood. We already have Prelude Apartments to the southeast, Linder Spring fourplexes to the southwest, the 55+ community of attached single family homes to the northeast, and a future PUD development of 138 dwellings that will be a mix of single family duplexes, townhomes, and condos to the northwest. This square mile already has every type of housing available, and I'm relieved that this builder did not choose to apply for a higher density designation, especially given our current middle school and high school enrollment numbers and the fact that those 138 units to the north are not constructed yet. It's also refreshing to see an applicant who is cognizant of existing neighbors and willing to work with them so the new development can integrate as seamlessly as possible with the current neighborhood. The developers reached out to us as Paramount residents through a meeting and planned pickleball courts after receiving feedback from us. Pickleball courts are not the quietest amenity, so I thought it was neighborly of them to construct those in their area. Plus, it would complement existing amenities here in Paramount should our HOA choose to annex the subdivision. As you know, I'm very big on transitions, and I'd like to thank the city staff for the recommendations on the revised lot transitions. And I'm glad to see the developer was willing to adopt those changes and make them official before submitting tonight. I believe this builder's done a wonderful job of matching a small infill area with the surrounding neighborhood. They're almost matching the density of Paramount with similar style homes and proposing to build elevations that mirror those in Paramount. The request to join the HOA tells me that they value our subdivision's rules and truly want to be good neighbors. Should Paramount residents choose to admit them to the HOA, Pebblebrook future residents would have to adhere to our CCNRs and hopefully maintain the quality of homes there, unlike existing CBH homes to the south that have not followed similar guidelines. As a former member of the Meridian Open Space Committee, I am pleased to see that this development exceeds the minimum 15%. It is regrettable they could not have access to Meridian Road to alleviate traffic through the neighborhood, even a right in or right out, but I understand that's an ACHD issue. If possible, it'd be great to add a condition to the approval that the construction trucks do need to access the area from Meridian Road. But other than that, I voice my support for this application and look forward to welcoming our new neighbors in this area.
Thank you, Sally. Council, any questions? Okay, appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Sonia.
May I clarify a statement I made a moment ago in response to Councilwoman Strader's comment about, is this the only parcel, I believe, left in this area? I did misspeak. There is approximately 4.5 acres directly to the north of this property that are rural residential properties that have yet to annex into the city, and they all have frontage on Meridian Road. But I don't think they're quite large enough for a neighborhood park, but I did just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
And Mr. Mayor, there are 5 lines filled in, but nobody marked they wanted to speak. So I'll turn it over to you.
Go ahead and go down the list and see if they would like to come up.
Absolutely. Joe and Mary Meeks. Mark Mullaney. Patrick Murphy. Lauren and Lori Bilal.
Good evening, Lori.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. My name is Lori Balad, 192 West Lockhart Lane. Back in April 1st of this year, there was a West Ada School District and City of Council Meridian meeting here. At that meeting, I have pictures of what was up on the diagram. Up here, it says the student growth and capacity. It's important for us to get feedback. It says the goal is positive relationships between the city and developers for the good of the students. Is impacting an overcrowded school. On page 2, I have a list of the impacted schools, such being Heritage. You mentioned here that Heritage is already at this time overflowing. Rocky Mountain was stated to be at capacity and Paramount was just a few students below. So in the best interest of the students, you need to decide, are you representing the developers or are you representing what's good for the families and students of this area? Over impacting the schools is not in the best interest of the area and the voters. Also, there were over 100 signatures, not that it matters, but I was so excited to get over 100. So that's minutia. At the planning and zoning meeting, there was also the woman that stood or sat to the right of the councilman that actually had the audacity to say, well, you can just send your students to private school. Well, just to think, oh, I've got $10,000 to spare per child. I'm sure all of you had that when you were young. Not like myself now, but younger with young kids. Oh yes, let's just send them that. I could not believe the audacity. And the city commissioner also had the audacity at the meeting to have to say, I need to step down from my soapbox, because he on several occasions said, you are lucky to be having this. It could be worse. He said that not once, not twice, but at least 3 times, and even said, I need to get off my soapbox. 3 people left this meeting. 2 of them said things that lived in Paramount, that this was rude and disrespectful, that the people are not listening. Now, you are elected officials. The people that were here and in the meeting, we're not elected officials. They're just people that are helping out. But people vote you, and they will remember what you do here, because we are not asking for it to be eliminated. We just want a 1-to-1, maybe 1-to-5 ratio. There is nothing but greed from the developers by not making it. There is not one thing that stands in the way of them reducing it down to 1-to-1 other than greed. Thomas Jefferson states, let's see. It was a gamble from them buying it. I got off track. But Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd president, says, the selfish spirit of commerce knows no country, no feeling, no passion, no principle but that of gain. So are you here for the residents and the families, or are you here for the developers? As in 10 Mile, you made them push in.
Thank you,
and
Lori. Your time's
more.
up. Your time's
And
up.
at 184, you had them reduce it. It's in your hands.
Lori,
You have the
your
power.
time is
Thank
up.
you.
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
Lori, I had a question, if that was okay. In your testimony, you said that you wanted to see a 1-to-5 ratio.
1-to-1. Sorry.
You're enthusiastic. It's okay.
Yes.
And
There's no
Lori,
reason they could not make it a 1-to-1 ratio to match it. It's within everybody's power, your power and their power. If you don't, you're following in and going with the developers. And I can speak.
Lori,
He asked me a
Lori,
question.
Lori,
I know.
But Lori, I asked the question. I asked for clarification on the one piece.
Mhm.
And again, we're all neighbors here. Okay.
I'm actually moving, but I felt justice to do this for the people, even though I'm moving out of Meridian.
Well, best of luck with where you're headed. I'm sorry that you're leaving our community, but
It's for my dad. I found a place where I could actually have a side house for my dad.
Well, that's good. I mean, family is the biggest reason why we call a house a home. So best of luck, and thank you for sharing your testimony with us tonight.
And please consider it. It's very important to the voters, and the families are paramount.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody else who signed up?
Mr. Mayor, that was it.
Okay. Is there anybody present that would like to come provide testimony? If you'd like to come on up. And if you're online and want to provide testimony, please use your raise your hand feature so we can bring you in when it's your time.
So I don't know how to do the formal whatever.
Just state your name and address.
All right. So my name is Laura McDermott and I'm at 357 West Broderick. So basically right where North Gable comes in there. So a couple of things. I was wondering when you guys gave the density of Paramount and you're including the apartments, which is just right. That's like an outlier. So what is the density of the Paramount subdivision minus the apartments? Because that falsely lowers it. So to say, because I think, I don't remember the numbers, like 3.3 or whatever, so we beat it. But if you didn't have a 3-story multiple building apartment, what is the density of Paramount?
We can ask the staff to see if they can reply to that.
Okay, because I don't know. So I'm also a mom. I've got 2 boys, and I'm just gonna kind of, I do think I heard you guys say it tonight about doing the private school, and I think that is should not be, somebody mentioned it today, or else, no, it was before her. Somebody mentioned that, you know, we are worried about crowded schools, but don't worry about the public schools because there's plenty of private schools around. That was for sure said tonight because I heard that word and I wrote it down prior to the woman who just spoke. And so you have to consider this plot, you have to consider the one in Winco, and the schools are already very crowded. And then you guys also considered the open space. Well, right now they're open, but what if, I mean, there's a lot of schools that lock down their areas. So what would that park area look like in the future if you don't have access to Rocky, if you don't have access to the elementary school because they've fenced it off? You're squinching your eyes at me, but it could happen. You know, you don't know. So why are you were like you didn't understand what I said? Oh, you guys said, oh, there's plenty of park area available between Rocky Mountain and between Heritage, but they are open campuses now. You cannot look into the future and say that they are. And if you look at the parks in Paramount, they're not, minus the schools, they are not large areas. And then, so I guess that's one thing is that the schools are already incredibly impacted. And so you can't look at the other private schools that are available because to assume people have the funds to pay for that is not appropriate. And then I would like to know what the density is. Additionally, the backyards, I mean, we're across the street, so it doesn't affect us personally, but the houses that abut to the, you know, existing neighborhoods, how close are those homes to the backyard? Like how much, you know, is it something that all of a sudden these people are going to be looking right at somebody else's houses? And if they plant trees, right, and it's like already a tiny lot, then I don't know. So anyways, those are my things. So I think that it's quite a few homes in there. And I agree with what Sally said as far as we already have like every type of housing that you could think of. So we already have the apartments, we already have duplex, we already have the.
Thank you, ma'am.
community.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I think just because I appreciate, I can't remember if it was Laura that was her name.
I think he might have a question for you if you'd like.
I don't, I want to make, because I think this was something that came up and I just wanted to give you some clarification. What I think you're referring to about the private schools is when the applicant was presenting, they touched on the proximity to a private school. So there's a St. Ignatius school that is just down the street.
Well, I'm well aware of where
Okay,
they are.
sorry.
I'm saying that it should, when you're looking at the ability of a community to handle the students that are there, that's like a cherry on top of the sundae. You should never say, well, you know, they can always go there. The public schools that are there need to accommodate everybody that's there. If they choose to go to a private school, that's fine, but you can't assume that they will. And it's already, I mean, my son is at Rocky and, you know, he's in the portables, right? So just saying, like, it's already impacted now, and that's before all the stuff gets done at Winco, and that's before, you know, whatever is gonna go in here. So I mean, I agree that, I mean, it sounds like, oh, well, we did you guys such a favor. We could have put in 60 houses and we took down 6. How many of the people on the, I'm just wondering how many of you guys actually live in Paramount that like would actually be affected? So we have one person, right? So it's so easy to make decisions for a neighborhood that you don't actually live in. Because to say you live in Meridian, great, but if you don't actually send your kids to those schools, if you don't actually live in that neighborhood, then you won't really feel the impact of what's being proposed here. I'm not saying to scrap the whole entire thing, but I do think that not just rubber stamping it and look to see as, you know, I certainly don't want townhomes or condos or anything like that there, but I think looking at it to see if there's a way to reduce the number of homes, to really look at the density of Paramount minus the apartments, because I think you'll find that it's actually higher than you think.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, real
Councilman Cavanagh.
just a couple, I think, points that I would just to share from a perspective. which is you've got half the council right now that have kids that are in West Ada schools.
But in this one I'm talking about,
Well,
in
but-
Heritage
But
and Rocky.
so Meridian elects their city council members by district.
I understand
So
this.
that means that 5 of us, if one of us lives in Paramount, 5 of us can't live in Paramount.
Oh, I
because we have
know
to
that. That was
so-
my point.
So, right, we have to look,
This
we
is
represent
our-
the entire city and the challenges around schools are something I think that this city council has taken really to heart. So I can hear the frustration in your voice. I'm just more trying to share with you. I can't think of a single time that this council has considered a housing application on the merits of students that would go to a private school. We are champions of West Ada because we are families of West Ada. So so,
At capacity, where are they gonna go?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Cameron.
I believe according to what we've heard from West Ada, the district can accommodate, I think, right around 1,200 additional students right now. That's what the school is telling us. And that challenge is right. And this is where I think the frustration is valid. We've got more students in Rocky Mountain than what the school says that school can handle. Whereas just down the road, Centennial can accommodate way more students, but the district hasn't made the decision to move students from one school to another. That's a frustration that we deal with, is that the city of Boise, which feeds largely to Centennial, can continue to send students there, where Meridian families are continuing to feel the pain. So I want you to know that I sympathize with where you're coming from. But I didn't want you to feel that because 5 of us don't live in Paramount, that we're not sympathetic to the challenges that are going on in our schools. And I know I would never expect you to come spend a Tuesday night, every Tuesday, to come watch these city council meetings. But we argued and wrestled on a project that had like 13 homes because of the impact on West Ada. So we take these issues seriously. I can tell from some of the conversations, we had some challenging conversations at the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I'm being a little bit more upfront with those that are willing to come up and testify, because I feel bad that that was your experience. But I wanted just to let you know that we are Meridian residents, and we send our kids to the same schools that you send your kids. And we want the best education for our children. That's the reason why a lot of people choose Meridian as home.
Yeah, because I just think it's crazy when you look at the Winco development and then you look at this and just the increase in traffic where kids play. And I think it's gonna, I don't want to like scrap the project. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think to look at, is there any way to like maybe reduce further like the number of homes? Because 54 in that area. And then I think he said he was gonna put like 101 trees in the open area of like 2 acres. Where's the open acre gonna be after those 100 trees are full grown? And maybe I misunderstood you, sir.
Just go ahead and direct it up here.
Oh, sorry. But anyways, I was just thinking like, well, gosh, when those 100 trees get bigger, what is that 2.3 acres of open space gonna look like?
Councilwoman Schrader.
And it's possible I misunderstood, so.
Sorry, Laura, before you go, quick one.
I didn't know it was gonna be so popular, sorry.
Okay, so you have a lot of concerns, which I share. Like, I share the same concerns about school overcrowding. I think it's a huge issue. I want to understand, though, when you say we don't want to scrap the project, we don't,
Like it's a done deal.
well, I don't know. I mean, from your perspective, what would a good outcome be tonight? I'm just curious, like I definitely heard everyone had a bad experience at planning and zoning, and it sounds like they came off as not caring about people's feedback, which is totally the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. I know everybody cares about people's feedback. I just want to understand from your perspective, do you feel like a great outcome tonight is, approving this project with matching lot lines on the, outer streets, facing Woodward? I mean, I'm just curious, what do you think a good outcome would be in terms of changes? Like, if you feel changes are made, because what I'm not hearing from you is turn it down. We don't want to see anything here.
I mean, ultimately, I'd prefer there was the park, but I realized that's not possible. So I'm not a planning,
Sure.
zoning expert at all, But I think that you can fudge the numbers to make yourself feel good. So by saying that the density is like, oh, it's 2.8, but that's incorporating the apartment. And I think that and then we don't have, we do have, I think the smallest lot in Paramount is 4,000. Well, but it's not 13 acres of 4,000 square foot lot. So it's a very tiny part of Paramount. And so I think if you really take those outliers of what's that really tiny part of Paramount and take out the apartments, what is the density? And then I think you would come to like maybe a more agreeable number with homes. And I'm, like I said, I don't want townhomes there. I don't want condos there. But I think if you really looked at the outliers, then and took those out, then you would, and I don't know the numbers, you guys or somebody that you can get in contact would look at that and be able to come up with like a better number.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
so sort of play devil's advocate. If I'm looking at it here, right, I mean, I definitely see that they adjusted the plat. So, there has been a pretty significant improvement, at least from what I'm seeing in terms of, if you look at like one of the Paramount homes, I can't find one. I'm still looking here that faces, well, I guess I do see one that's kind of an odd shape that might face like 2.5, but it does look like the, kind of 1-to-2 ratio was something that they took feedback on. So I was just curious, did that help in your mind? In terms of support or not support of the project, do you feel like the changes just haven't gone far enough? Like help me kind of understand.
I don't think I'm the expert in this. I'm just saying, I'm just looking at this from like a school perspective. I'm also looking at it from, like, it's like right where our neighbors, I'm looking at like the traffic that's gonna go literally right by my house. Cause I could throw a ball to where North Gable is. And, so I'm looking at the impact of schools, and then, like I said, the more houses that you have in there. I'm not saying that they didn't make any accommodations, but did they make the accommodations off of false numbers, right? So is the house density or whatever, is that really 2.8? Or is it, because I think theirs is like 3.3, so we beat it. But if you take out the apartments in the super tiny row of 4,000 square foot lots in Paramount, what's that actual number? So,
Thank you.
okay.
Tanya, did you by chance happen to have,
Yep.
I don't know if you're over there trying to crunch the numbers, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, but I have some variables that I can't, I don't have the information for right now. The apartments do, make that density higher, but there was also a comment in the staff report about the density would change upon residential development of another lot. And I can't find a copy of the plat in Laserfish to see what that was. And I'm not sure if that was the multifamily lot or a different lot. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question accurately for you tonight.
If you can give a ballpark-ish,
If I calculate the acreage, that was part of the multifamily development, which skews the numbers because you would typically subtract that acreage. If you're not going to count the multifamily, it's 2.2 units per acre.
I'm sorry,
2.2.
roughly.
Then I can't calculate what the acreage is of the multifamily. I don't see it listed out separately in the staff report to be able to do that.
All right, thank you. Okay. Go ahead and come on up.
Hello, Joe Meeks, 928 West Barrymore in Paramount. Been there for quite a while, since 2004. So I've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood. This is going to get built on. I mean, maybe not this time, maybe not next year, maybe in 5 years. But we should take the opportunity to take this version rather than getting something way worse put in there, something that perhaps the situation in the future doesn't allow us as much control. So we have a great opportunity to take the best, I think, opportunity we have for this development of this area. It's not been anything for a long time. They're going to make some amenities. So I'm for it completely 100%. And there's no guarantee that every person in here is going to have 2 or 3 kids. I mean, you know, you have that many houses, but maybe that's not the case. We don't know. I can't speak to, you know, the school situation. That's, you know, that's a broader topic, I think. But as far as the builder goes, I think they've been very cooperative and been very amenable to, you know, looking at the options and considering them. So I'm just want to state my case as, you know, I'm for the development.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to go, come on up, please, sir? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Ramont Turnbull, and I live at 447 West Broderick Drive. And I think what's being missed on these numbers is, as far as the density goes, this particular northeast section of Paramount is made up of the nicest and largest homes. They're not made up of apartments. They're not made up of the carriage homes or any of that. And because of that, I think before, and I signed a petition to lower the density. I think the density should match the homes that are immediately on the perimeter of the property. And in just looking at it from a distance, I've looked at it much closer at home on a smaller map. They don't match. There's not a match there. There's crammed in there. And I understand that. I understand that money needs to be made, but at the same time, not this way. They need to match what they have there in the immediate perimeter. I think that's a reasonable request. Now, whether that's 40 houses, whether that's 45, I'm not sure. But I think that's a reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who'd like to come forward and provide testimony at this time? Is there anybody online that would like to provide testimony? Okay, then would the applicant like to come forward to close?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I just want to reinforce a couple of things. So we're currently in conversations with ACHD about a construction entrance off of Meridian Road. It is going very positively. So we anticipate that will happen. We'll keep that open as long as we possibly can to avoid having construction traffic go through a subdivision. Regarding the school capacity, we did receive a letter from West Ada School District. They evaluated this development and they said their anticipated impact was 17 school-aged children from this development. That's their numbers, not ours. That's what they told us. So, and while there are private schools, we're not relying on those to be, used by the residents here. I know, there's, depending on your situation, you can send your kid to a private school or not. It's just, but, that's kind of where we're at with when we're getting feedback from West Ada that says that that's the impact. And they said that we've made all reasonable accommodations for pedestrian connectivity and walkability. We feel pretty good about that. The density of this project is less than 4 units an acre. It is way lower than what's allowed in R8, which is 8 units an acre. And my client, the developer, doesn't want to try to cram a bunch of homes in here. They're actually looking at this as a fully compliant on the low end of the R8 that all of Paramount is. It got developed the way it got developed because of the choices that were made by that developer at the time. They could have done densities that were higher there. They chose not to. When you're doing infill redevelopment of projects, it's inherently more challenging. You're typically dealing with weird shapes of lots. You're dealing with stubbed roads. You're dealing with a lot of existing things around you that we're trying to balance. That's what was all taken into consideration when we finalized this plan and made our submittal. We do meet all of the standards of the R8 zone or exceed them. All of our setbacks will match the setbacks that Paramount has. All of the, I mean, we're not requesting any variances for any aspect of this development. It's all within the allowances of the UDC or ACHD's policies for public roads. And I just want to reinforce, these are detached, single-family homes, upwards of 3,200 square feet, just under 3,200 square feet, if that's the model that the person decides to purchase for construction there. These aren't patio homes. They're not attached. Yeah, someone could do something different. Again, we feel very good about this project and what it'll bring to this area. I would stand for any additional questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor.
Just one question. If you could maybe speak to the last, Mr. Turnbull's comments about this particular part of Northeast Paramount has some of the larger kind of higher end homes, his concern with how that might match with your development. Can you just speak to that a little bit, address that concern directly?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, we looked at this in a couple different ways. We did get some direction from staff where they mentioned that 2-to-1 maximum ratio creates that transition. We have some other lots in here that have 1.5 lots of the Paramount, larger lots that are adjacent to them, specifically on the west end of this project because of how this narrows down. So we end up with 2 of those lots against 1 of the lots in here. So there was kind of a give and take to try to find out how it laid out best. You know, reducing it down to, or having the largest homes that matched exactly what was in Paramount would severely reduce the housing product here. Paramount has a very wide range of homes. This fits in well with a range. I know that there's some patio homes that are over by Paramount Elementary. I know that because my mother-in-law lives there. And it's a fairly high density area that right across the street has large homes too. And everybody seems to be pretty neighborly there. So I guess we tried to get as best we could while also understanding that this is an investment that my client is making in Meridian to bring more housing to the market.
So while I'm not good at math and shapes sometimes can be confusing, if I do a simple number and I start down here, if I'm looking up at the map, kind of down where the last house in Paramount is and wrap around up to where the street intersects, there's 24 parcels on the outside and 21 parcels on the inside. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same size. I'm not saying a lot of things, but from a numbers perspective, there's fewer on the inside that match up to the existing Paramount homes than there are homes as I count them, but someone else can correct my math or my site. Yeah, and if you keep going with the rest of them down there, yeah, there's a road that separates, but the numbers are probably, it's gonna be almost pretty identical in the numbers. But I know it's not this, just, am I wrong? Okay, I just want to make sure my math, my counting, because it doesn't look that way. When I look at the map, it doesn't look that way because there are more 2-to-1s, but anyways,
Mr. Mayor.
I don't have a question or an answer, I just have a statement.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
it does
Kemmer.
at least, it kind of extend to where my question's coming from, because again, I think you're a political science major, I'm a political science major, we're not very great at math.
History.
History. So I did something similar. I counted 32, I think, on the exterior, 26 on the interiors. So again, you're the subject matter expert when it comes to design and layout. Help us understand why we couldn't get to, if you've got less units on your interior perimeter than there are houses in Paramount on the exterior perimeter, what's preventing kind of that 1-to-1-ish matchup? Even if it was, you know, I get every now and then architecture, design, you gotta have a fudge a little bit here and a little bit there, but help me understand that what makes you doing, I think what the neighbors are asking for, prohibitive.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh, you know, I'm not the one that purchased the property. You know, a lot of it is an investment, the money that they spent, they're trying to get a return on that. To reduce the number of lots, you're right, there's 21 along the boundary where they are immediately adjacent to Paramount Homes. You know, that's gonna drop the number down. It feels, because of how we have it laid out along the southern boundary, there's 10 homes along the side where there is 7 homes, one of which is a fairly narrow at the, kind of down at the southeast corner there. So that would take 10, put it to 7. The geometry of the western end of this property to get our required street frontage for our lot per the UDC, our depths and our widths, you know, and not doing common driveways, which I know is not a very popular thing to do in Meridian right now. It led to this layout. It's to put a 1-to-1 ratio on the outside is more than likely leading to some challenges with the road network, and then being able to get other lot sizes to match within the development.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I have a very similar thought process. So just stepping back, right? Infill, it's always hard. And this is a very infill because you're completely surrounded by Paramount. So I feel like in this case, it is really important to be sensitive to the transition. And just looking at it, I mean, you have a pretty good alignment, I think, on the northern end. You have a buffer of Mitcham Avenue, right? That I think that buffer helps with that transition to the north. Over to the west, I think the lots you have are actually larger than the lots in Paramount. It's really this south. It seems to me like the biggest issue are the lot lines along Gleason Street. And I mean, just looking at it, and I understand every home is important for your client's investment, but it looked to me like if you lost one home on West Gleason Street on the west side and maybe 1 or 2 on the east side of Gleason, it looked to me like you could easily achieve a 1-to-1 lot line with the surrounding neighborhood. And I'm just curious, you know, is that something that your client will consider if it helps the application? I think what you're hearing from neighbors is some frustration around school overcrowding, which I share, and just really a desire to see something that looks like it is Paramount, like that it is very similar or close to the same lot lines. I think you could keep that density that you do have here kind of in the middle of all the pickleball courts because no one's directly next to that, right? I think your biggest transition issue, just from what I see, is all kind of along Gleason Street, sort of the south part of your client's property. And I'm just curious, you know, is that something that you all would consider if that's what it took to get it across the finish line, is relatively modest reduction in density that I think would, you know, really alleviate a lot of concern.
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Strader, I'm going to have to defer to my client to that question.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable answering that for them. I will, I guess, reiterate that the 2-to-1 ratio was what was given to us by the city as an appropriate transition along the perimeter here. And so that was what was pursued. To start eliminating lots becomes challenging. We can't add them back anywhere and still meet our open space or still get the amount of open space that we want on this property and on this project. So yeah, I mean, I can turn it over to my client if that is allowable.
Maybe, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Maybe we take 5.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Do we need, you want to take a break? Is that what we're seeing?
Give it a chance to chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if, we'll go ahead and take 5-minute break. I'll just say this. I was not recommending, I was actually saying you guys are better than the outside edge, just so we're clear, but we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Could I clarify something real quick, please? It appears that the slide in the applicant's presentation is outdated. I don't believe it's correct. And I just wanted to say that because it appears everybody's looking at the previous plan. So I just put up the most recent plan. And if you'll notice, especially right here, the previous plan showed like 3 lots here.
Okay.
And this is the improved plan here. So I'm I'm afraid we got a little off track there and I just wanted to clarify that and thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank Sonia. I did send it to you and then had already sent in my PowerPoint and I didn't.
Well, why don't we take a 5-minute break so we can look at this revised? Because yeah, I was not counting on this.
I put it in my presentation, the updated one, but I did not realize you didn't put it in yours.
Okay. All right, 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 7:30.
looks like if they dropped like one home here and one home here, they could match it.
All right, we'll go ahead and come on back. Invite the applicant to be back up, and Councilman Schrader, do you have a specific question based upon conversations?
Yep. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah.
Give everybody a chance to. I was wondering if you were waving at me, sir. I was like, yes. Um, Sorry, my line of questioning, first of all, thank you for putting up the correct plat. That's very helpful. Just looking at it though, again, it looks to me like if you lost two homes, you could match all the lot lines on the southern part of the property. And so I was just going to ask your client, like, are they willing to do that?
Mr. Mayor, and Councilmember Strader, I had a chance to talk with my client. You know, feels really great about the layout right now. If it's a difference between an approval or a denial, or the disposition of the council is swayed, you know, he has offered that he can drop one lot that's west of Garbo and one lot that's east of Garbo. And then they're all 63 foot wide right there. That 63 feet gets pushed into the other lots that are a lot between 14-1. I think the plat has the lot numbering. Yeah, so I don't know if cursor, I don't know, Sonia, if you can point to 14-1, right by the cul-de-sac bulb, just below it, just to the right of that. Yep, so there's 14-1. So from that to the right to Garbo, drop one of those lots and push that width into those lots from 14-1 to the corner there. Same thing from one on the other side of Garbo there along the south, down, drop one out of there. The challenge with matching those lot lines is there's a really large lot as you get down there to the right. I just don't think that we can match that width and achieve dropping just two lots, but he has offered that if that is the direction that the council would like to see and that makes difference, that's what he can offer.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Schrader.
That's a very generous offer. And I think that that reduction in density of those two homes could make all the difference in the world. I understand what you're saying. I mean, you do have, you do have that one lot that's kind of a trapezoid shape that has kind of a large northern border, and that you're not going to be able to match that one exactly, but I think that's fantastic. I mean, then I think if you lost those two, you could really come very close to matching all the lot lines. And for me, that would make a big difference, because then I think there's really no argument left. At that point, you really are very compatible in terms of transition with the surrounding neighborhood. Now granted and again, single family detached housing, which I do think, I feel very strongly is preferable in this area in terms of fitting the surrounding neighborhood. So I really appreciate your client's willingness to consider that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask a follow-up question? Would that be contained in an additional condition of approval that gets added?
We certainly could do that. Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
That's a yes from staff.
Thank you.
Council, any additional questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
I just had a couple questions for staff, if that's okay.
The floor is
Sonia?
yours.
Oh, thank you. Sonia, if understanding the applicant has offered to reduce their development by two homes, would you recommend that we just add that as a condition of approval? Would you think that we need to see a revised plat? Like, what, in terms of the process, what do you think that process should look like if we did go down that path tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, Council, that's under your purview, of course, but I think it would be sufficient to include a condition of approval that they honor what they stated.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Schrader.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And then I did have just a couple of questions for our Parks Director, if that is possible, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Sidway?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just, from the perspective of a resident, if I'm, and I don't expect residents in the city of Meridian to closely follow the ins and outs of all the changes that happen, but if I looked at the comprehensive plan and I saw that there was going to be a park in my neighborhood, I would be so excited. And I thought, oh gosh, we're going to get a park over here. Turns out we're not getting a park. You did send an email, but could you please explain, just for everyone's benefit, what are the reasons that this doesn't work as a pocket park? Explain how, I think everyone knows we're served by Settlers Park, but if you could just kind of get into some of the thought process, because I can understand how people are disappointed looking at the map, hoping they're going to get a park in their neighborhood and then they're not.
Sure, I'll start with the general answer, kind of
Okay.
with the future land use map, and then I'll zero in, because it sounds like you wanted a specific answer to this parcel as well. But the park stars exist on the future land use map in order to give us as a city an opportunity to talk about whether or not should be the park there. And I have been grateful for the opportunity that's given us to have a conversation about a park at that location. It is noted on the map that they're not parcel specific, that they do float. There's not much place in this particular square mile for it to float to. So, but it nonetheless was there. I mean, if you look at the map overall, basically in the square miles that do not have a City of Meridian Park, there's a star there for us to be able to have a conversation with development as it comes through. And I love parks. I want more parks, and I don't want anything that I say tonight to come across with the idea that I don't. But not every park star becomes a park. What every park star is an opportunity to talk about if it is the one appropriate as development comes through. Often when especially with larger developments, they can become a catalyst for a conversation for a partnership. It's not very realistic on a 13-acre site to talk about a donation of a 7-acre piece. But the direction, and this goes back several years, so if this council feels differently, I'm all ears. But the direction from previous council was that given our limited resources of funding and et cetera, that we should focus primarily, if we're purchasing land, to focus on those larger community and regional parks. Doesn't mean that the smaller neighborhood parks are off the table, but the expectation has been that those would come in with a partnership, a land donation, and often some kind of a partnership that would involve like green up. The opportunity for this without us purchasing the property just isn't very realistic. So while we never pursued a purchase of this parcel, we have been aware of it. We've looked at it. I kind of laid that out in the email, but just to give some of the highlights, there's 2 parcels here. I don't know if they would have ever been sold separately, but just to take them separately, the interior one is large enough to meet our minimum 7-acre size for what we consider a neighborhood park. I think it's 8.7 acres, but that parcel has no frontage. There is 0, and we like our neighborhood parks to have as much frontage as it can for visibility into the park. Having not been planned as a park up front, it's surrounded by 6-foot solid fences. It's not the lower or open vision fences that would be required if it had been planned as a park from the beginning. There's also the 2 stub streets that have been seen. And so we know that if we were to build a park there, it would be bisected by a road somehow. That front parcel has a house and outbuildings on it. And to think that I would spend our limited resources to buy a house that we would just then tear down didn't also just seem like not the right use of the resources that we have. There are a
Councilwoman
number,
Schrader.
oh, you have a question? Sorry, I can pause.
Oh, if that's okay. Could you just touch on, so what in the future state of the city, what will be the parks, the public parks in close proximity to this area besides Settlers Park?
So Settlers Park, we also have an agreement with the school district. We manage the Heritage Middle School open space with the ball fields. We paid for the lights there, and there's not a playground per se, so I don't want to overstate that, but we do manage that as a park and schedule those. Going off without a map, but so Heroes Park would be, I think, the closest to the west, Settlers Park to the south. To the northwest, we are working on land that I don't own yet, but we want to see a future Fields District Park. We also, it's well on the record that we've been working with the Ewings for Margaret Aldape Park to the north as our first park along the Boise River. I think those would be the most significant parks in the vicinity.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really helpful. I mean, so the area is served by a decently close proximity of about 4 different public parks. It does make me kind of sad that we, are moving away from neighborhood parks in some aspect. I mean, I do think there is a purpose for them, but I understand what you're saying. You feel like this isn't really an ideal location. I just thought it was important to get that perspective on the record so that people could kind of understand the thought process that the city's gone through.
Thank you. And let me just say that these HOA parks are key to the open space plan for our city. As a city, we are trying to hold the line on around 3 acres per thousand, but with the speed of growth, we continue to lose ground on that. I think the last count, we were about 2.6, I think. But when you count all of the HOA parks in the city, we're closer to 10 acres per thousand. And that is what I would call the effective level of service of the open space for our residents. That's an important number to me. As a city, we don't have to own all of those or, require the tax dollars that would maintain all of those. But those large parks are high amenity, high value parks, and that's what we've been focused on. And we do welcome partnerships for the smaller neighborhood parks. We've done 3 just relatively recently with Rita Husky Park and Keith Bird Park and Hillsdale, which is classified as a community park, but at just over 11 acres, it's kind of a similar size. So those are all significant partnership parks that involve donation and green up and things, and we do pursue those actively. So yeah, welcome the parks. We love them. We want more. It just didn't make sense here for us to pursue it for a purchase, and there wasn't a realistic opportunity for a donation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Steve. Sorry.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Thank you. Had someone earlier, well, thank you, Steve, for clarifying that, but we had someone testify earlier that they were concerned that the school green space could get fenced in, but it sounds like, at least with our partnership with Heritage, that would not be an option, that will always be open to the public as long as we're maintaining it.
Yeah, not there. Paramount Elementary, I don't know that we have the ability to say that it could never change, but I know that their policy is that those open spaces are purchased, they're the public's. And so when school's not in session, the playgrounds are available for the public to use. That is how it is today.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
happy to kick off some discussion.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard, we close, well, I guess the
It's not closed yet. So applicant has concluded Public hearing is still open, so you can either close and discuss or discuss and close, however you'd like to move forward.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
I have a motion second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
I'm happy to kick off some discussion. This is a tough one. I commend the applicant for making the changes that got us to this point and also for offering up this reduction in density by an additional 2 homes. I think that, to me, it goes above and beyond being a good neighbor, and it will really help, I think, in terms of the transition really should be seamless at that point with the surrounding neighborhood with almost very close. Now, there's one property that wouldn't match, but almost an exact matchup of lot lines along Gleason Street. So I think, Mr. Mayor, that in light of, and I know people don't like to hear this, but what could go here, and then we have an applicant before us that has made a lot of changes and has now agreed in this hearing to make an additional change of a reduction in density by 2 homes along the south. I'm in support of this project at this time. I think with those changes, it really helps. And in our comprehensive plan, we talk about how transition with neighborhoods is one of our most important principles. I think this gets us there. So I'm happy to make a motion unless there's further discussion. Mr. Mayor, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2024-005 as presented in the staff report for today's hearing date, with the additional condition that the applicant has agreed to remove 2 homes along West Gleason Street, one on the western side and one on the eastern side.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? If not,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Whitlock.
As I think about the proposed density and what's allowed there, anywhere from 3 units per acre to 8 units per acre. We started tonight at 3.87, and I think we're at 3.73 if my math is correct. So it's moving in the right direction, closer to that minimum or bottom level that the applicant could have submitted, farther away from the 8 units per acre. So I will be in support of the motion tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
just want to make a couple of comments. I'm going to support the application. I think it's worth noting, though, that we had a good, thorough discussion about what could have been here, the park discussion. Steve, thank you for that. Appreciated all the testimony that was provided. Really good point was made about the challenges of developing infill, and I think as we're going to see more and more of that. But I think it's worth commending the applicant for your flexibility. Clearly, you made some efforts throughout the process to listen to the neighbors. I do think we need to be careful about impugning motives, however. We talk about property rights. We talked about the founders, and there's a statement that I've always enjoyed, and I want to read it. America's founders understood clearly that private property is the foundation not only of prosperity, but of freedom itself. Thus, through the common law, state law, and the Constitution, they protected property rights, the rights of people to freely acquire, use, and dispose of property. We also know that our founders envisioned a capitalistic society where self-interest was the supreme form of improving the outcomes of products and services that we have. And so I don't think it's greed. I think the desire for motive is the best motivation for the applicant to produce the best possible product. We like to pat ourselves on the back for this beautiful city that we've created, and I didn't build it. No one up here built it. Developers, builders, and tradesmen throughout the valley built it. And they did so with their own capital and their own vision for what they wanted to bring. So to see an application come to this council that tries and I think largely succeeds to fit in well into an awkward space, I think they did a very good job. And so again, I have no problem. They bought the property, they can develop it. They followed all the comprehensive plan, all the zoning requirements that we've asked of them. And yet we also acknowledge them as being the subject matter experts. I would have been fine. I think it's great that you're willing to drop a couple lots. I would have been fine not requiring that at all. I don't think that's a requirement, but I think it just shows that you're being a good neighbor, and I really appreciate that. I think that's great. So I think this is a good project, and I stand in support of it tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I wasn't gonna say anything, just take the vote, but a couple comments. I want to thank the residents for coming out tonight. For the council, for an applicant, right, this is the day job, but it's, for many of the residents, you take time out of your way to go to a neighborhood meeting, and then planning and zoning commission, and then city council, and you send emails. I loved it. We got voice testimony, you know, in the record. I appreciate when people call and just tell us what they think, and I just think that's great. What sometimes happens along that long process is cynicism starts to develop. And you get this voice in the back of your head that tells you a lie. And you hear it long enough, you start to believe it. And you believe it so much, you start to say it a lot. And we heard it tonight. We heard it. There was this accusation the city council somehow in cahoots with a developer. It's hogwash. It's hogwash. What you said was hogwash. The people of this council, when I see my colleagues put significant time and homework and read the testimony and reread the testimony, and we ask probing questions because we care about our community. So if you hear somebody and they say something that sounds like hogwash, you should call them out on it. That's not what our community is about. We're neighbors. And so I appreciate, I feel the same way as Councilmember Taylor. I appreciate your accommodations. I would have approved this project as presented. It's low density, low impact on our schools. Your efforts to complement the neighborhood is well found. We don't see a lot of applicants that come through that are wanting to be good neighbors. And I appreciate you guys for doing it. I'll be in support of the application tonight.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
I too just wanted to add my thanks to the developer for just doing your due diligence to start with. You gave us a project that was really pretty great to even begin with, because as we've mentioned before, the other opportunities that had been passed by that weren't as conducive to having happy neighbors. And so I think this is a great project. Infill is so difficult, and with the roads and tight spaces and things, it's not always easy, and it's not always easy to manipulate. And so again, thank you, and thanks for everyone that has put forth the information for planning and zoning, emailed us, testified again, and it does all matter to us. Even though we're all in separate districts, thanks to having zones, but we do all care all about Meridian. So thank you.
Thank you. Just 2 cents. I won't, obviously I don't vote in the situation, but not sure if the HOA is listening, but hopefully you'll see something that you all have value to be part of your community, because I think your community is going to want some of these amenities. And the last thing we want to have is people have to say, neighbors, don't come in to use these courts if you can, but that's for all you decide as time moves forward. So best of luck at that point in time. With that, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton. I apologize. Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Thank you very much, and good luck on your project. Council, anything under future meeting topics?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Tonight, I think a good opportunity was raised for maybe a future meeting topic about planned parks, vision parks, how they sit on a map. So maybe as either part of a department update down the road, but I think it may be worthy of a good conversation just for us to understand kind of the historical nature of it, where the Parks Department is growing, and how we can make sure that maybe and situations like this where dirt starts to go away, what the department does to respond in kind.
Okay. Mr. Sitaway, you've got that on your future come to a workshop council. With that, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
move we adjourn the meeting.
Motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.